Welcome to Build a Beautiful Life. I am your host, Mitzi Campbell. Every once in a while, you meet someone whose story changes everything you thought you knew about life and death. Today's guest is John J. Davis. After clinically dying for 7 minutes, he experienced what can be described as the other side, an NDE or near-death experience that forever changed the way he sees life, purpose, love, and what awaits us beyond this world. Whether you're deeply spiritual, simply curious, or even skeptical, this conversation invites you to consider some of life's biggest questions with an open mind. So let's dive in this remarkable journey with John J. Davis. Welcome, John.
Hi, Mitzi. Thanks for inviting me. So nice to be here.
You were so kind I always just love, you can always tell a lot about a person by the way they respond to an invitation. I'm sure you're invited to a lot of shows, people you don't know will just contact you and ask you. And you right away were just so warm and so inviting and just said yes immediately. And so I know we're going to have an amazing conversation. And I love people like that who are very just open and willing to share themselves with others. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love this kind of work. I always enjoy sharing my story.
Okay. And it's a really important story. And I am fascinated by near-death experiences. I'm fascinated by the idea of past lives. And so I am excited to get into it. My dad had 2 near-death experiences. So I understand that it informs your life after that experience in a particular way. So I want to get into your story and then talk a little bit about what the significance of this experience is, you think, for mankind. So that's going to be the overarching theme. I've heard you say in other interviews that you remember this experience like it was yesterday. So no matter how many times you've told the story, it just is so fresh in your mind. And I find that really interesting because that's usually not the case with memories. They tend to change and even fade a little bit. So I'm really excited to hear you tell this. And I wonder if you could just start out by taking us back to the day you died.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you how the whole thing started. It all began with my dad, really. My dad was in sales his whole career. And one year he won a contest. And part of what he won were these mopeds, or what we would call scooters today. And we used to ride these things all over the neighborhood. But one day I was out riding and I had an accident and I slammed into a tree. And the way that I landed, I had to have the 10 tendons on my right hand reattached. I was only 21 and I had never had surgery before. So I didn't know what to expect. So my mom drives me down to this clinic or hospital, I forget what it was, but where they did the surgeries. And when they started to give me the anesthesia, I had some kind of an allergic reaction and my heart stopped. And that's how my whole story starts. That's how it began. And I like to tell people, your listeners, just so they know what kind of makes my story a little bit unique, is you know how when you hear about a lot of people's NDE stories, they find themselves floating above their bodies and they start moving down a tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel, there's a white light, but they've always been met by somebody, either a family member, a friend, a loved one who tells them, it's not your time. You have to go back. But what they did with me is my whole story starts on the other side of that white light. And what happened is as soon as my eyes shut, and I'm in the operating room, my eyes shut, the very next second, I woke up and I was standing in the most beautiful building I had ever seen. It was beautiful, white, polished marble. It was so long, Mitzi, it was so long, I could not see the end of it. It
Wow.
was gigantic. I looked over to my right. On the right-hand side of me were all these marble columns, 20 or 30 feet high, about 6 feet apart, going all the way down as far as you could see. In the middle of where I was standing were these tables, marble tables about the size of someone's kitchen table, again, going as far down as you could see. And there were 2 people sitting at every one of these tables. Right about then, in my left ear, I hear, "My name is Alan. I'm your spirit guide." Back in 1987, nobody was talking about near-death experiences. I don't even think the word had been invented yet. And we didn't know anything about spirit guides. And because I was raised Catholic, I had no experience with this, and I thought maybe this was an angel. I didn't know what to think. But he said, "My name is Alan. I'm your spirit guide." And what happened is my guide, Alan, took me on this journey of what we call the other side or heaven, the afterlife. And he was with me the entire time, and he was telling me every single thing that I was seeing. And he told me that the building that I was standing in is called the Orientation Center. It's the first place we all come to when we finish a lifetime, and we go down the tunnel and we walk into that light. So he's telling me all these things that I'm seeing. And when I look to the left hand side, this was the most beautiful part of this building. It was like solid marble. And out of this solid marble were doorways that it looked like they had been cut out of marble, perfect doorways. And they were tunnels. And when you looked at them, it was like looking into space. And Alan told me, he said, "Look at the next tunnel." So I looked up. The very next tunnel, there was a man coming through. He was an elderly gentleman, probably in his 90s, and he was doing this. He had his hand over his chest like he had pain. And Alan said he just died from a heart attack, and he was coming through the tunnel. There was a woman, or what they call them orientation counselors. The woman that was sitting next to that tunnel, she stood up and she walked over to him. She took his hands in hers and she sat him down across from the table. And she held his hands the entire time. And she started talking to him, but I was too far away. I couldn't hear what she was saying. But Alan told me that the orientation counselors are there to help people remember where they're from and to help people not to be afraid of the dying process. Because that's the number one fear of humanity, is the fear of death. And so what she did, she was telling him that he just finished his lifetime here on Earth. He passed from a heart attack, and now he's back home again because Earth isn't our home. That's how God set this whole thing up, that Earth was never meant to be permanent. We have to die to get back to the other side or to get back home again. Wow. So here's the craziest thing
I
about
have a
this
million
part.
questions already. So
you can ask me.
Let me just stop you for 1 second. All right. So
Sure.
You were 21 years old. You're on the operating table. Don't know that you're allergic to anesthesia. I assume you've not had anesthesia since then.
Yeah,
okay.
No, and I never.
I would not take that chance again.
Yeah.
But you didn't experience this traditional tunnel situation, but you were suddenly, you were on the table 1 minute and the next minute you're with Alan in this beautiful white building.
It was like an instant.
Like that.
Yeah, it happened so quickly. My eyes closed, and I guess that's when I died. And the next thing I knew, I opened up my eyes and I was standing in that building.
Do you think that because you didn't experience that tunnel, so that what the tunnel reminds me of the birth canal experience, how we have to go through that to come into life. Maybe we go through that to go into death. I don't know. But do you think because you didn't experience that it was a sign that you weren't meant to stay there?
I don't actually know. I don't even know how they did that. I don't know how I ended up on the other side unless everything that they showed me, I was supposed to tell people. That's why they showed it to me. So I think they wanted me to tell people that there's nothing to be afraid of when you go into that light. Everybody has to go through the tunnel and to get into the light.
So even though you didn't go through the tunnel, they told you that was part of the process normally?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Because when we all pass, our soul leaves our body and we start to go down the tunnel, and somehow, and I don't understand how this works, but those tunnels, all of these tunnels connect us with Earth and home, the other side. And I don't know what they are. I don't know if they're wormholes or interdimensional. I have no idea what they are. I just know that's how we get back to the other side. And not to be afraid of that light, because the light is what welcomes you back to the other side.
Yeah.
And it's the light from the orientation center that goes into those tunnels. That's what people are seeing the light from.
Okay. So they're seeing the beautiful white marble building is really emanating that light. And it's a place of light. It feels like you're describing it as a positive place, a place of light.
It was the most beautiful, positive. I can't even describe how beautiful this building was. I've never seen anything like it here on Earth.
How are the people
Extraordinary.
at the tables dressed?
They were all wearing some kind of a gown. What you're wearing. It was the ones that I saw, they were white. There were two people at every one of these tables. And the two I was looking at, they were wearing kind of white gowns or white robes. But people, they wear anything they want to wear. It's so interesting because some people like to wear gowns like that. Other people like to wear jeans and a t-shirt. It's totally up to each individual.
Wow.
But I think the counselors all wear some kind of gowns so that they're not quite as abrasive when people come through.
Okay.
Because they told me that almost everybody who comes into a lifetime on Earth, we don't remember where we're from. And I don't know how that works. It's a God thing somehow that we have amnesia. And when people pass, they don't automatically remember where they're from until they get back to the orientation center. That's how it was explained to me. And those
Okay.
orientation counselors are just very welcoming, very loving. They're there to help people remember where they're from and to congratulate them for finishing their life. And now they're back home.
Okay. It's really fascinating. The idea that we are so afraid of what lies beyond our human experience,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense because we have all of these natural emotions like fear and love. And so, does that exist on the other side as well? Do people experience the same kind of emotions, do you think?
I think so. Because when I was there, everybody has their own personality and their
Mhm.
own look to them. And I think we all look just as God created us. What's really interesting is that we're all in our 30s on the other side. And I don't know why. I never asked my guide why that was, but apparently that's how God created us. And everybody, just like if you were to go to a public library or go to a restaurant during busy time, everybody has their own look, their own personality, how they want to dress, and our individuality. It's just like that on the other side. You are exactly like you are now. It's just that when you're there, you have access to all of your memories,
Mm.
not just the memories of this life, but you're totally who you are as you are now. But you're free of all the old negative programming, the old negative thinking. All those things are gone once you get back to the other side. And you are back to who God created you to be. Because I think when we come into a life on earth, we are bombarded by so much information about what you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to dress, what your kind of job you're supposed to have. When we're all raised to believe that we have to be something instead of just being who we are. And I think a lot of us spend our whole lifetime trying to get back to the person that we are on the other side.
Okay. It's fascinating. So I want to know how you got to see other people. What happened with Alan after the orientation center? How did you get to find out that there were a lot of people there and how they were dressed and how they looked in their 30s and whatnot? How did you get to that
Yeah.
point?
I don't know how we moved because he took me to these different places. All these different places he took me to the outside first of these buildings and then took me to the inside to show me what they looked like and what they were for. But we didn't walk anywhere and we didn't fly. So I don't really know how we got to these different places. Everything was happening so quickly that I didn't even have time to think. I was just absorbing everything that was coming in. So I think how he got me to these places was by thought somehow. In every place that I went, I saw people and they looked just like we do. Wherever it was that he took me, it was a really busy place on the other side. There were people doing all kinds of activities. And that's when I learned that nobody just stands around all day over there. They're actually busy. They go to lectures, they take classes, they go to music festivals, they go to the beach. They have lives that they continue just like we do here. And everywhere I went, I saw different people.
Did you see
And
anybody
they
you knew?
no, I didn't really have anybody that when I had my experience, I was 21 and the only people that were there that I would have lost was my grandmother and my great grandmother. But I don't think there was enough time for me to see them
Mm.
because
Okay.
I didn't see anybody that I'd known.
Okay.
Although I did see two of my cats that I had. That's when I learned that, oh my gosh, God created our animals with souls also. And when they pass, they go to the other side just like we do. So when you have your reunion, not only are just a bunch of people that are waiting for you, but so are all your animals.
Wow.
And that was extraordinary to learn that.
That's beautiful. I'm so happy to know that. What's coming into my mind is the idea that if certain traditions, like the Buddhists, for example, and many other spiritual and religious traditions, will believe in the idea of reincarnation,
Mhm.
so many lives. So, if, and I happen to believe that. So, if that's true, why is it that we are present in the afterlife in that form that we just left in from Earth, if that makes sense? So if I'm going there, if you're there as your 21-year-old self, if you would have stayed there, you would have presumably been in that body, in that form that you were. Did you get any information about what about other lives? You mentioned people can remember all their lives. So what determines, or did you get any information about that? What form you take? Can you choose what form you take? Which one you want to be, who you want to be?
Yeah, Alan, he didn't actually tell me that, but I got the impression that everybody appears how they were created. And just because you look like you're Mitzi right now, but when you pass, you probably aren't going to look like you look right now. You're going to look like how God created you. But I know that we can, and somehow I think it's done by thought. I don't know how else they would do it, but you can appear however you want to. I've heard of a lot of people who will appear as their loved ones remember them. So if you pass and you're looking for your grandmother who died when she was in her 80s, they might appear as they are when you remember them. But that's not how people are on the other side. When somebody, like the gentleman that I saw who came through that tunnel, he was probably in his 90s. He'd lived a long life. When he crossed over, he doesn't stay as a 90-year-old man. He changes back to who he was as just as God created them. And the same thing happens with children. When children pass, they age up into their 30s. That's how God created all of us.
Okay.
And I think that's probably one of the main, I shouldn't say the main, but it's one of the reasons that a lot of us come into a lifetime to experience having children, because we only have that when you come into a life here on earth, for example.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's a very good point because I think there are so many souls. I don't know, maybe infinite number of souls.
Yeah.
And I suppose it makes sense to think about how being in the afterlife that you would be taking on kind of a neutral form. So if you have to have a form, and I've also heard the idea that when you are in that realm, that you don't necessarily even need to have a body. What do you think?
Yeah, that's something that I have heard people ask me or tell me that other people who've had NDEs have seen people as just energy or light, but that's not what I saw.
Okay.
Everyone that I saw, they look just like you and I do. And there was a part of my NDE where Alan took me to this gigantic round building, this beautiful, gigantic round building with columns all along the circle of it. And it had this big, huge dome on top. And he told me, this is the building we go to when we plan a lifetime. So when I was in there, I looked to my left hand side and there was this gigantic window and there was a walkway outside the window. And this is the first time that I saw people. And it looked like if you were to go to a large city, like in Pennsylvania, the biggest city at lunchtime, and you're standing there in the middle of downtown and you see all these people going around everywhere, that's what it looked like. I saw all these people and they were busy. They had places they were going to and they were all wearing different clothing, but they look just like we do. And if people over there are energy or balls of light, I didn't see that.
Okay.
But I also didn't see any angels. And I know angels are real because so many people have told me that they've seen them. I just didn't see any. But everybody has their own hair color like you do. Yours is darker, mine's brown, some people are blonde. Other people are taller, some people are shorter. And I think that's because they appear as God created them, because he created all of us to be unique,
Mm,
individual, and different, just like
mm,
we are here on earth. And we take that personality with us. But I don't know how to explain the bodies over there because the bodies over there are stronger. They don't age, they don't get sick, they don't die. They're perfect. Whereas our bodies here, they're subject to getting sick, they age, they have to die for us to go back home. But our bodies aren't perfect here like they are over there. So I can't explain why some people say that we appear as energy, balls of energy. I should tell you this because at the very end of my NDE, when Alan took me to that meadow and I thought I was standing there by myself, and then he left and I was standing there. So I turned around and right in front of me, 3 feet from in front of me, was standing the being that we would know as Jesus. And he had a beautiful white robe on, and he had a golden sash around his waist, and he had gold colored sandals that laced up his calves. I could see everything about him. But when I looked at his face, it was like this. It was all of this light was coming out of his face,
Oh,
and I couldn't see what he looked like. And he was different than everybody else I saw. Everyone I saw, they looked just like you and I. But I couldn't even see what he looked like because of all the light that was coming out of him.
that's beautiful. I wonder if going into the orientation center is like the transition, and
Yeah.
maybe people have to appear in a familiar form so that it's not as startling or not frightening. What do you think about that?
I think that's probably true because I'm sure that people in this country, in the United States, they probably expect to see Jesus. So that's who they see. But if a Hindu in India has an NDE, who are they going to see?
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to see their being or their God. Same thing with the Muslims, or same thing with whomever else, whatever they particularly believe in, they will probably see something that will comfort them.
Mm.
Because here's something that's really interesting, and I never understood how this happened. But remember the part of the orientation center where those counselors are sitting there and
Yes.
they're waiting for people to come through the tunnel? They know who's coming through and when. And I don't know how they did that because on every one of those tables, there were no computers, there were no papers or anything, but they all knew who was coming through and when. And I think they know that so that they can be prepared for someone to see who they think they should see when they pass, if that
And
makes sense.
yeah, it does. But also because you talked about the place. So Alan took you, just to recap, Alan met you when you arrived in the
Yeah.
orientation center. And then he took you to different places. He took you to this place with lots of
Yeah.
people doing all kinds of things. And then he took you to this round building, which he said was the place where people plan their lives.
Yeah.
So if the lives are already planned ahead of time, then it would make sense that the people in the orientation center would know that it's going to be the last day of someone's life. They're going to know who to expect because it's already been
Yeah.
planned. Makes sense to me if that's the way it would work.
That is interesting because I've always wondered how would they know? Because I thought that because there were a whole bunch of people that were waiting for this gentleman that when I saw come through the tunnel, there were these areas to the right that I call the gardens. I don't know if that's what they call them, but it looked like that to me. And there must have been 150 or 200 people waiting for this man. They were waiting for him to come back to congratulate him for finishing his lifetime.
Oh.
And somebody had to tell all those people that John Doe is coming through. He's finished his lifetime. He's coming back. Let's all be there to greet him. But I don't know who did that. Do you know what I mean? It's
It
like
feels
I
like
can't.
it's just a knowing. I think that's just
Yeah.
a knowing. What's interesting, your story was really interesting to me because not too long ago, I spoke with this woman who is a psychic, and she told me so many very cool things. But one of the things she told me was that I had 137 guardian angels, and
Wow.
that I know, isn't that cool? And
Yeah.
that they not only for me, but for everyone, they do celebrate. They do have a lot of excitement about things you're doing, and that when you do make a transition, that they are there to welcome you. She was telling me about this process, which is very similar to what
Yeah.
you said. So I see a lot of consistency in some of these stories, and I just think it's so cool to think about that, to think about what happens.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm curious about with your story as well is this place that you went. Did you get the sense that this was the final place? Because you talked about you go into the orientation center, there's tunnels. The tunnels lead there. But then do people stay there or is that like the in between? Is that we call it the bardo? Is that like the in between spot? Do they go somewhere else afterwards? Do you think they can go and plan another life and go back to Earth? Did you get any sense of anything like
Yeah,
that?
here's what I the impression that I got. Wherever it was that he took me, it was what it feels like to be on a college campus. You know how colleges have, here's your history building, here's your English building, here's your science building. They're all different buildings, but they're all in the same general location. That's what it felt like. But these buildings were so enormous. We don't have anything like them here on Earth. He took me on this journey of these different places about what happens when we pass, how the whole process works. But once they have the reunion and they do a life review, I don't know where they go after that.
Okay.
And I learned also that we don't always come back into a lifetime. It's not like we always recycle because we spend most of our existence is on the other side. That's the place that God created for us for eternity. And we just come to a place like Earth whenever we want to learn something new or experience something that we can't on the other side. And one of the things that I had a really hard time with is after my NDE and I realized what had happened, I went through a horrible depression. I did not want to stay here. And I could not figure out why would anybody voluntarily leave a place like the other side and come to a place like Earth. And it's not that I'm trying to badmouth Earth. There's a lot of beautiful things here, beautiful people, but there's also a lot of things that aren't beautiful here. This is not a perfect world by any stretch of the imagination. And I just couldn't figure out. I even thought about suicide to try to get back there. And I just couldn't figure out why would anybody come here. And then I had to remember that we all come here voluntarily. None of us are forced to come here. And my guide, Alan, said, the reason the reunion is such a big deal, all those people are there to wait for us, is there are many of us, he told me, who don't want to come to a place like Earth because it's one of the hardest of all the planets. All the things we have to go through here, a lot of people don't want to experience. And he said that just the fact that you come here makes you a warrior and you've already succeeded. A lot of people I talk to feel like they were never a success in their lifetime because they didn't get married, didn't have kids, they didn't go to college, didn't have the great job. They never really felt like they accomplished what they were supposed to. And I tell people that doesn't matter. None of this stuff on earth, that's not what matters. To the other side and to God, all that matters is who did you become and what did you learn and who did you help along the way. Those are the things that matter. And people think that, oh my gosh, I didn't have that $1 million 401k, or I never got that promotion, or all the things that we're raised to believe that we think matters. It's the exact opposite. Those things don't matter. What matters is when you finish your life and you look back on your lifetime here, all that matters is that you never gave up. You didn't quit. You kept fighting and you made it all the way through. And the reward for having survived all of these things we all go through here on earth, the reward is how you grew. Who did you become from that life?
Mm.
Because that's the reason we leave a place like the other side. The other side, there's no war or conflict or disease or hunger or poverty. None of that stuff exists there. It only exists in a place like Earth. And we know that the best way for all of us to learn is when we go through something challenging. And that's why we come here,
Mhm.
because it's those things that teach us the most.
Do you think Earth is just a big school?
Yes, yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's really interesting?
What?
There was a part of my NDE where Alan took me to a planetarium. And I only knew it was a planetarium because we would take field trips to them when I was a kid. So he takes me to this planetarium, and there was a guy behind me who ran the planetarium. And on the other side, everybody seems to do the things that they love to do regarding the gifts that they were given because God gave us all gifts. Some people love math. Some people like history. Some people like architecture. And everybody does what they love to do. The gentleman that was behind me, he knew everything about astronomy. He actually ran this planetarium. And part of what he showed me was all the planets. He showed me billions and billions of planets on the ceiling of this planetarium. And he said to me, there is far more life in the universe than you can possibly imagine. And they wanted me to tell people that Earth is not the only inhabited planet. Not only is it not the only inhabited planet, but it's not the only world that we can have lifetimes on. It's virtually unlimited. And here's something that'll blow your mind. And this will be interesting for your listeners too. I'm a total astronomy fan. And ever since I had my NDE and had that experience, I started studying astronomy. Astronomers believe that in the Milky Way alone, there are 100 billion planets. And they think that there are 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. If every galaxy has 100 billion planets, can you imagine how many planets there are? And we're just one of them. It's so astounding. I can't even wrap my head around how many that really is.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm always a big fan of the sentence, we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
It's unknowable, and we have to accept that. And that's why it's always so interesting and fun to learn what's possible and what is it that actually happens after we die. It's just
Yeah.
interesting. I tend to believe that maybe it's a little bit different for every person, but there are similarities. What do you think?
I really don't know. All I can tell you is the buildings that I saw, because he took me to these different buildings,
Yeah.
and it was so interesting. A lot of them were made like what we would call Greek architecture, like the beautiful white marble, the columns.
Yeah.
I think those are things that everybody sees. They're there for a reason, all these different buildings. And one of the places that he took me to was this gigantic, it was the largest building that he had taken me to. And it was a library. It was so long, I think it would take days to walk through this library. So we go on the inside, and he tells me everything you've ever wanted to learn can be found in this library. And there were people everywhere who were looking at books and studying, talking to people, visiting all these different places. And he took me to the left-hand side of this library. And on the left-hand side were these study rooms. They look like study rooms that we would have in libraries today. And he walks me up to this one room, and there was a woman sitting there. She had her back to me. She had jet black hair that went all the way down to her waist, and she was wearing some kind of a purplish or maroon gown. And she was watching something. Mitzi, it was so weird because she was watching what we would call today as a 60 or 70-inch flat screen plasma TV mounted on the wall. But when I had my experience, it was 1987. We didn't have TVs like that. We had those big, huge, thick television sets that weighed 100 pounds. You couldn't put those on a wall. So I was looking at that, thinking, what in the world is she looking at? And I always wondered, does that mean that the other side is 30 or 40 years ahead of us technologically? I never understood that part. But I remember that, and I wish that I would have asked Alan what that was.
Did you have any contact with Alan after this experience?
No, he told me that they can hear us when we talk to them
Okay.
out loud. So I always talk to him, especially when I'm driving, but I've never actually been able to hear him again like I did that day.
Even in your dreams?
Yeah, I've never seen him in my dreams.
No.
And if he was there, he didn't tell me who he was.
Okay.
But usually, I don't really have a very good memory. And we were talking earlier that it's so interesting that I remember every single detail of what I saw, because normally I can't remember what I had for dinner last night. And I know that if it wasn't for God, I would not have remembered any of this stuff that they showed me. But I think God gave me the ability to remember every single detail so that I could share it with people, to let people know that the happiest day of your lifetime is going to be your last day, because that's the day you get to go home. Everything you've been through, all the hurt, all the pain, all the disappointment, it's all healed. And you have this tremendous sense of relief when you get back. It's, oh my gosh, I'm home. I'm back home again. And we all have that to look forward to.
Yeah. When you know someone who's going through an experience with that it's their time, like my mother passed away when I was 35 years old. She was only 56.
Oh,
And my
she was
dad,
young.
she was young, I know.
Yeah.
And my sister, my dad, and I were all with her at that time. I think that when you can be with someone as they pass over, that is a very special thing that you can do for somebody to be with them.
Yeah.
But the thing that strikes me about that process of dying is that people fight it. People don't want to die. They will fight it. It's like a
Yeah.
survival instinct that we have. And even with my mom, I remember saying to her, because she was just suffering and hanging on, and I remember saying to her, it's okay. It's okay. You can go.
Yeah.
And that was when she was able to release. And so I don't know. It's so interesting. It's like such a dichotomy that you're saying it's going to be the best time of your existence, but yet as humans, we fight it.
Yeah. It's something that I think collectively humanity has the number one fear is dying. And I think that's the number one fear all over the world in every single country. All the people I've ever spoken to, their culture, they talk about that they don't want to talk about death. They want to pretend that it's not real because everyone's so afraid. They think it's going to be the end,
Yeah.
that once they die, they lose their memories of all their loved ones, all their friends, family, all of their life experiences. They think it's going to be the end, but it's nowhere near the end. Everything that you had in your lifetime, all of your experiences, all of those go with you. You take all of it with you. You don't forget anything. But what happens is just all the hurt is gone because everybody that comes into a life here on earth, nobody's going to have a perfect life
No.
because that's not how it was set up. If you want to have a perfect life, you would just stay on the other side. You wouldn't even come here. Everyone's going to have their Mount Everest moments here in life. Everyone has those dark nights of the soul. But when you get through that and you finish your lifetime, you realize that those are the things that made you who you are. And there was a wonderful professor that I loved. His name was Leo Biscaglia. And he said something I never forgot. He said, yesterday made us what we are today. And all the things we go through, they shape us. They mold us who we wanted to become because we all, something I should probably tell you for your listeners too, is that Alan told me that nobody comes here by accident. Nobody's an accident. In that building that we go to, where that had the big dome on top, where we go
Yeah.
to plan a lifetime,
Yeah.
they have these scrolls there. They look like Egyptian papyrus scrolls. And before every life, we actually write down the things we want to accomplish. And it was what a lot of us do when we do New Year's resolutions. I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to stop smoking. I want to exercise. Because when you finish a lifetime, you go back to this building, you get your scroll, and you look and see how you did. Did you accomplish everything you wanted to learn? And that's something that we all do. We all come here for specific reasons. Some people come here to experience what it's like to get married, to have kids, have a family. Other people come here to work on a skill like skiing or something like that. Other people come here to work in a particular career for some reason. There probably is many different reasons to come to a place like Earth as there are people on the planet. Everybody comes here for different reasons.
Yeah. And I've also always believed that the the most important thing is the transformation that takes place. That's why we talk about being forgiven for sins, but it's about the idea that we're given those sins, those opportunities to make mistakes so that we can transform, so that we can
Yeah.
become better and learn. Do you think that's why we come here?
Yeah, I think we do. Because if you didn't want to make mistakes, you would just stay on the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Everybody comes here because they told me that on the other side, we still learn because I think God gave us all the love of learning and
Mhm.
we learn for eternity. But when you come to a place like Earth, you tend to learn the most when you go through something difficult.
Yes.
If you look at your own life, you think I never really learned when everything was perfect. I
Right.
only learned a lot when I lost that job or I had to get a divorce or something happens, if I was diagnosed with an illness, and those are the things that tend to teach us the most. And it's not just for us, but it's also to help our fellow human being, to help them in their journey also, because we're all of us are on this journey of betterment, of improving, to reach our potential, to see what we're actually made of, to grow and to develop and to become everything God created us to be.
Yep, yep, absolutely. So I want to go back to the moment that Alan took you into this meadow and then he
Yeah.
left and he let you have this private encounter with Jesus.
Yeah.
What was that all about, do you think? What were
I
you supposed to bring back from that?
Sure. My first impression was, why would Jesus talk to me? There's nobody more average on this planet than me. But he said to me, I think it's what he said. He said, "You must tell them there is no death." And he didn't say it like, "Hey John, when you have time, when you're not busy, would you mind showing everybody what we showed you, or tell people what we showed you?" He didn't say it like that. It was, "You must tell them there is no death." And so ever since then, I just kind of got the idea that's what I'm supposed to do with my life. That my life really isn't so much about me, it's about the message. This is a message that people need to know, because there's so many people that are afraid of dying. There's so much anxiety, so much panic in people's lives. They worry about dying,
Yeah.
and they don't need to be, because they're just going home. We
Hmm.
just go home again.
So maybe mortality isn't what we think it is.
It's exactly. It's not at all what people think.
Interesting, because my dad had two NDEs. One was a car accident situation, and one was an allergic reaction to bees. And
Oh,
he, at both times, did look down and see himself, but was able to return. But he also has the same feeling. He didn't have the same experiences as you. I don't think he was shown any of those things. He didn't go that far. He was hovering
yeah,
and then came back. But he feels very strongly that his reason for coming back and his purpose here is to help other people with their transitions, to help other people to see that it is nothing to be afraid of and that
yeah,
it's we can help each other through it. It's just like almost like he's orientation on this side to go
yeah,
to the other side. And that's just fascinating. I'm curious. I want to touch on this also. You mentioned that after this happened, you're 21 years old. That's super young, and you don't have a lot of life
yeah,
experience. And you're probably just wanting to have fun. At 21, that's all I really cared about was hanging out with my friends, going to school, kind of
yeah,
starting my adult life at that time. And this would have been, it would have shaken my world up to have something like that happen for sure. And I know
yeah.
you said you experienced a lot of depression. And did you start talking about it right away, or did you have to go through that emotional roller coaster before you could start talking about it?
I actually went through about probably 2 months of debating whether or not what I experienced was real.
Wow.
Because I was raised Catholic. My dad was very Catholic, and he would take us to church sometimes 2 or 3 days during the week, and then also on weekends. So I was really skeptical. And what I did is, do you remember? Oh, actually, I forgot to mention this, but there was a part of my NDE where Alan took me to see three past lifetimes.
Oh,
And being a Catholic, that's not part of Catholic theology. We only have one life. So this was really difficult for me to understand, because I saw three different lifetimes. After my whole NDE, I told myself I'm going to go see a hypnotherapist, because I'd heard that you can see past lifetimes when you go into hypnosis. And I thought if I could see other lifetimes, then I would know that my experience was real, that it wasn't just some hallucination that I had. So I went to see this woman, and sure enough, I saw three different lifetimes. And that's why I became a hypnotherapist, because I wanted to do that too.
oh,
But
wow.
that's what really convinced me that what I saw was real, that there really is a God. There's a place called the other side that God created for us, that nobody ever dies, death is just going back home. But I started telling people right away, as soon as that was done. And I didn't really have a lot of people to tell. I wasn't plugged into anything. We didn't have the internet back then. There was no Facebook. I just told people on jobs that I had or acquaintances, just people. I would just tell people, hey, I want to tell you something that I experienced that might give you some hope and some peace.
Yeah.
But then I guess it was about 5 or 6 years ago that I really got the idea to start putting my story on social media. And that's how it all started.
Did you ever get into contact with anyone who studies NDEs as a part of their research?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think I have.
Okay, that would be interesting for
Yeah,
someone to include your story as part of that. I
yeah,
know there are
yeah.
researchers who look into it. The whole past life thing is so cool. I actually got certified as a hypnotherapist, quantum healing hypnosis therapy, which I don't actively really do, but I was trained because I also found it very interesting.
Is that
And
Dolores Cannon?
yes,
Yeah, I've got one of her books.
yep. I've read them all and
Oh,
she's
really?
yeah, she was really cool. Yeah, I went through her coursework to become a hypnotherapist. And
Wow.
yeah, the idea of past lives is fascinating. The idea that we don't remember, and a lot of the past life work is done with children because they tend to be
Mhm.
closer to that experience
Yep.
and so they remember it and we kind of
Yeah.
forget. But what you're
Yep.
saying about having to be reminded once you cross over that our human brains can't contain all of that. It's almost as in when you cross over, you expand. Your consciousness is accessible to you, whereas here it's
Yes,
really not.
exactly. That's a perfect way to describe it. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
super interesting. So, as we come to an end, is there anything important that you need to say or you feel I haven't asked you that you'd like to add?
I would want to tell all your listeners that I know that there are times in your life where you're going to feel like you can't make it. We all go through those storms of life. But I want to tell your audience that you're never alone. God is always there. We all have a guide who's with us for our entire lifetime. And you would be absolutely shocked to know how many people are rooting for you on the other side. So many people that none of us are ever alone. And just never give up. Keep fighting, keep moving, keep pushing through. No matter how dark things get, the storms don't last forever. And when you know that you have God and your guide and all of these loved ones with you, it makes you stronger. Because I can promise you, when you finish this life, you will be so proud of the things you survived. So never give up. Always keep fighting because there's a reason for all of this. And you'll be so proud of yourself when you finish.
That's beautiful. So, where can people read about you, get in touch with you? What's the best place for
Sure.
people to find you?
The best place is my website. And what's really neat about that is I have a friend of mine, we coordinated some AI pictures of some of the buildings that I saw over there.
Ooh,
So my website has some of the pictures of what I saw. That's
okay.
kind of neat. They can also email me.
Okay.
My email is johnjdavis65 at icloud.com.
Thank you for sharing your story. And it's been wonderful talking with you. And I hope that you'll just continue to spread your light and your message with the world because it really is a beautiful thing. If we can latch on, no matter what you believe, and even if you're skeptical, if you can latch on to that hope that there is something really beautiful beyond this life, I
Yeah.
think that's just a very nice thing to have in your mind, and it does eliminate your fear.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
beautiful. Thank you, John.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Mitzi. It was so good to meet you.
It was good to meet you. Thank you for listening to Build a Beautiful Life. I'm your host, Mitzi Campbell, and it's been my pleasure to bring you this episode with John J. Davis.